Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson.
Greetings, Earthlings.
And Alan Seiler.
Greetings, Earthlings. I couldn't think of anything else.
Original.
And right?
And Veronica's not here yet. She's going to be joining us in progress tonight. She's on her way home. So now, everyone, I told her, be real quiet when you come in and don't cause a ruckus.
Yes.
So we'll all find out together how successful Veronica can do that.
Does the dog bark when she comes home?
The dog is very excited when she comes home. So
yeah, I'm sure
there's going to be a lot of commotion, I expect. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right.
Well, welcome back. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Awesome.
Do we have some news this week?
Yes, we do. So the big news is that apparently, okay, everybody knows the website Den of Geek. Apparently, there's a Den of Geek magazine. Who knew? And they have interviewed Terry Matalas about Star Trek Picard season 3, and he has like let a few little nuggets come out. I don't want to be too spoilery, so this is very, very general. And actually, he didn't say anything specific at all. Basically, there is going to be some tie-in, not only with Next Generation, but with Voyager and with DS9 as well. Mm-hmm. And he has mentioned before, like made little hints that we would see legacy characters from those two shows other than Worf and Seven. But it looks like this is going to be a little bit more specific, and particularly Worf's backstory leading up into season 3 has a lot to do with the fallout from the Dominion War, and that the fallout from the Dominion War plays a part in the plot of season 3, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
he says, quote, "I just felt like Picard season 3 needed to feel like it fit into this universe. It was very important to me, first and foremost, that it treads new ground, but also feel like a continuation of the stories and arcs set up 30 years ago. There's a fine line between fan service and just honoring the universe that you're in. So I just went full tilt at the things that mattered to me."
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
he seems really keen on just continuing the legacy of those 24th century shows, which
yes,
I would love. I mean, he said he wants to continue after Picard with, I mean, there's so many characters.
There's so many things.
So much backstory. You just keep it going.
Right. And he said that if he could have, he would have called this season Star Trek Legacies. But the story does still focus on the character of Picard,
right?
But that it's telling a much bigger story. So it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah. The only other news really from this week is just the continuation of this stupid feud between Shatner and Takai, and we're not going to get into that because it's dumb. And Takai called him a cantankerous old man, and he called Takai, I forget what he said, like something anyway, and it's just stupid, and I'm just not going to give them any time on this show because they're both being dumb heads.
Now it makes me think like someday it'll just be the last two survivors of the TOS crew just locked in eternal battle, like, and let that be your last battlefield.
Yes, exactly. It'll be like Kirk and what you call it, Khan.
Right.
I stab at thee, I spit at thee.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. We can only hope that it'll be that good and that dramatic.
2 comments in reverse order. I think that it is entirely likely that William Shatner was an irritant. He himself said he doesn't have a lot of friends, like real life friends. And I know for a fact that he counted pages. He counted script pages because Leonard Nimoy came out as the most popular guy. He got significantly more fan mail. All that being said, I agree with what you guys are saying. At this point and at this age, George, let it go. We know this. We have prima donnas. We have people who are arrogant. If you go back and look at the history of Hollywood, my God, some of the greatest actors and actresses of all time were not very good people. And I'm not saying Shatner's not a very good person, but one thing I will say is he doesn't spend as much time talking about everybody else. Then people would say, well, of course, because you were the guy. So I agree with you, Alan. It's just sad. Just leave it alone. because everybody loves George, and he could have, I think, an even better platform if he would stop this part of it.
Yep.
I think part of it too. I mean, I'm sure there's real animosity there, and there has been for
Sure.
years. But at the same time, these are two guys who are very practiced and very adept at keeping their names in the headlines.
Yeah,
and show business for a long time. So I mean, throw a barb at the other one in an interview, and you're on the front page again.
Right.
Yeah, and then the comment on the first news item you did, Alan. I think it's what else but DS9 would be the best to extend and continue a story like that. You know, one of the things we always talked about with Star Trek is what happened after. You want to know what happened after. And I think DS9 and the Dominion War is one of the best stories. And it also gives us a great chance to integrate some stuff and talk about that question people asked, which was, we know why practically. Why was the Federation flagship not central in the Dominion War? And we know why and all the little side stuff they said. But of course, since they couldn't film both shows at the same time and add them, that's always a big question. So I think it's kind of cool to take the TNG characters and bring them into that DS9 Dominion War story. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And we should give a shout out to we've got a Facebook user who is not displaying your name, Facebook user, but you're the first to comment, and we're glad that you're here with us live.
It must be Keith's friend from Dallas.
Yeah.
Hey, well, welcome. I'm glad you're with us tonight.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
We all waited for him to answer like he's going to answer. All right, Keith, do we have some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, we got a couple of things. One of them was super important. On the 27th of November, 1964, which I think is kind of amazing because in March 11th of 1964 was, 1967, 1966. First day filming. Okay, I'm sorry. That's me. I'm reading my own writing. The 27th of November was the first day of filming of The Cage.
Yes.
Now, here's a really wild thing. I guess this makes sense, but it also kind of pertains to what some people kind of didn't like about The Cage. Can you guess the very first scene ever filmed in a Star Trek series was the very first scene of The Cage that was filmed?
I'm going to make a guess. Oh, you know the answer?
You go ahead.
Oh, my guess is not serious.
Oh.
I'm going to say the very first thing that was ever shot was the women.
And I'm going to say the transporter room because I've seen the clapperboard photo of the first day of filming.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Spock in the transporter room.
So there you go, saying the women.
Actually, the very first scene filmed, according to what I got from the Trek site, that we got to check this.
You're probably right. Go ahead.
Was Pike in his quarters with Dr. Boyce lamenting about if he still wanted to be a starship captain.
Interesting.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a great start.
I mean, that sets the tone for the whole piece.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and interesting comment, Alan, because what some people who don't love Jeffrey Hunter in The Cage say was the Captain Pike who was kind of down, low on energy, depressed, thinking about leaving Starfleet, was a contrast to both Captain Kirk and William Shatner, who bounded onto the stage with incredible energy. And
that's unfair, though.
I agree,
because they're coming to it. They're coming to it from a completely different perspective. They're coming to it from having seen Kirk and then seeing, rather than Hunter being the first thing that you get.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, and I like it, but there are those who really don't like. Well, they're kind of like, well, it was a weird thing. Shatner comes in with a Kirk who is gung ho, and Hunter comes in with a captain who's a little bit doubtful. But that was the story, and I loved the story, so I thought that was pretty cool. Another one on the 28th of November. This is significant. We're getting up for a reason. First day of filming, 1966, 28 November 1966. First day of filming of Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And I think you guys know, but of course, that was the episode where the Enterprise goes back in time and meets Captain Christopher and captures the U.S. Air Force pilot. It has a really funny comedy bit. But you know what the connection of that is to another show in the first season, right?
To The Naked Time?
That's the one.
Yep, but originally it was planned to be a two-parter, and then they didn't do that, but they both used the sort of light speed breakaway factor, one on a dying planet, one around a black star, and then the sun to travel through time.
Right. And I always thought that. What do you guys think would have been if they had maybe done the Naked Time as a two-part? Do you think that would have worked, or do you like it better the way?
I like it the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to.
What is it, Keith?
Huh?
What's the show? What's the episode?
Oh,
The Naked Time.
Okay,
Sorry.
Mr. South Florida. Yeah, my Texas accent comes in sometimes. The naked, and that feels unnatural. The Naked Time.
Oh, and if you're in our Facebook group, our friend Matt Sweatman has been doing a daily ranking of the first season of Star Trek, and just recently commented on this episode. It's been delightful to watch, and it's a lot of fun to follow along with. So if you're listening to this and you're not in our Facebook group, come check it out. Matt's been putting a lot of work into that, and it's been fantastic.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, well, although his rankings are really weird so far.
Matt. I see you up there at Naked Time, Matt.
That's right, man.
and the last thing, I thought this was rather significant too. On the 29th of November 1965, the score was submitted for the episode Where No Man Has Gone Before, scored by Alexander Courage.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's cool.
And of course, as any Star Trek fan knows, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I honestly feel this way. The music in the original series is still the best track music I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's the fact that they reuse so much of it, so much that it literally is natural to me. And some of the best music in Trek is in that original, is that episode Where No Man Has Gone Before, and you can still hear it throughout the rest of the series. So I thought that was a pretty significant thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And so if you're listening to the audio podcast, we're going to take a quick break and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show, but stay right there because we'll be right back with our discussion topic. And if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on, and we're going to talk tonight about the pop culture of the Star Trek universe. And I've tried several different ways of phrasing that to make it clear, and I've not succeeded. We're talking about the pop culture of the future, the pop culture that's present in the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 32nd centuries, because we often don't see that. We often see them watching Shakespeare, listening to jazz recordings, things like that. We don't often see what the contemporary culture of the time is. So go ahead.
It's funny that you bring that up too, because in tonight's episode that we're going to be talking about later, we get a Chopin piece.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes,
I know.
And I made a note of that.
Of course, they don't have anything from their own time that they listen to, because you got Chopin.
Yeah. Well, is there a top 40 station in the Federation? What are the hits?
Right.
It's funny. I made a note of that because in my real life, in my personal life, I don't work well with quiet music. Like I do IT stuff and all this kind of stuff. I don't put on jazz and stuff. I put on Rush and Def Leppard.
Rush.
ELO. Yeah. And so even though I don't like the use of the Beastie Boys and the Abrams movies, just because I'm not in love with them, it would be kind of interesting to see a Starship Captain when you go into a ready room, they're just blasting rock music while they're like doing battle plans or something.
Right.
Or something
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I was thinking about it in trying to come up with examples, and we've got a comment from Elaine Sweatman saying, I just said that about Chopin. But I was thinking the earliest example I could think of sort of something that was not a reference to now, something, it was still a reference as being old at the time, was the poem Nightingale Woman and Where No Man Has Gone Before. That when Kirk recites a poem, he doesn't recite something from Earth, he recites something from space. Yeah. And I thought that's interesting. Well, from another planet.
Space poetry.
But then after that, the first thing that wasn't contemporary. That was something that he was reciting an older poem. But something like Beyond Antares may well have been contemporary. The song that Uhura was singing.
Yes, exactly.
In the Wreck Deck.
Exactly.
Is that the one with the refrain "Where My Heart Is"?
Yes.
I love that. Because that's when what's his name was getting poisoned, right? While she was singing to in the
right,
Conscience of the King.
Conscious of the King. Yep.
Yeah. Somebody's got that 20th century spray bottle poisoning Riley. Yeah.
Right. So we're looking for examples like that. So Conscious of the King, a good example, because in Conscious of the King, they're watching Shakespeare. But then you also have Uhura singing a song that we don't know. A song that's not, at least not from our time. It could be from now. It could be from the near future. It could be from the far future. We're not sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the classics is going to continue because they've continued for us. But I agree. You think there would be some more original stuff. Only I can think of one that was well. I got to go here. I'm jumping forward really fast, but heading out to Eden.
That's right. Yay, brother.
That's an original composition, and it's supposed to be contemporary for that time. Even though it's 60s hippie stuff, it's supposed to be contemporary in that century. That's supposed to be their culture.
Yeah, and that gives you a look at what's going on in the Federation. I mean, they had their own hippies and their own Herberts,
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, what other examples can we think of things that are contemporary to the Star Trek future? I mean, we get a lot of times where they're just referencing people who are composers.
I was going to say the same thing.
Planets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get names thrown in then they'll say Beethoven, Mozart, Shostakovich, and some Vulcan dude,
right?
Or they'll make some. Well, and another one that I can think of is I can't remember the title. It's somebody and Milota. The Klingon opera that the four-armed lady was doing a scene from in that bar in Gambit.
I
Somebody
exactly
and
Milota.
Milota. I wish I could remember the full title.
Yeah, that was another kind of. You're right. That was another kind of an original composition from that time, contemporary music of Klingon opera.
Yeah,
yeah, and so we know that. I mean, they would have scenes on Deep Space Nine where they're talking about Vulcan composers, or they're talking about Bajoran music. So we know that there's at least an art scene going on, in the Federation. Then, fortunately, the people we're following are educated people, so they listen to a lot of classic stuff. But they're also commenting on things that are going on in their time.
Right. So, and of course, here's the thing: it's easier to do something that exists than it is to make up something that doesn't exist, like new stuff. And the reason that you always hear opera or jazz instead of rock music, of course, is because of cost. You would have to license a rock song. So there's two components to this. There's the song itself and the recording of the song, and it's two separate expenses.
Right.
If you're talking about classical is in the public domain. And since you have an orchestra that's already recording the score for the show, you just have them record a little Mozart piece or something instead of licensing a recording of a Mozart piece.
Right. Or pulling from the Paramount vault of stock music that they already own.
Sure. Yep. And then with jazz, you can just hire a combo to improvise something, so you aren't paying for an actual composition or anything.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of things in Star Trek where it doesn't date well, right? And that's one thing that you avoid by not coming up with a fake future thing, is it doesn't feel like space 80s when you're watching Next Gen.
Exactly right.
And a lot of shows fall into that, where it's space 80s, or it's space 70s. It's Battlestar Galactica, and Buck Rogers would have that sort of
Buck Rogers in the 25th century. You're right. And you're right. And I would agree, because in some ways, a lot of the aspects of the original series, even like the men's haircuts with that short kind of military haircut, those haircuts go through any century. But if you look at, say, TNG with mullets that people kind of sort of had, they kind of the long hair, sometimes it dates it. So I agree with you. And not even just music and stuff, because we don't want to expand it here. But if you look at it, most of those people, in the captains especially, they almost never live in what we would consider futuristic homes. Almost every one of them has like a log cabin with some space tech around it, but nobody lives in like a Jetsons home, even though you gotta assume people would.
If you work in space, you don't want to live in space when you're not at the job.
Right.
So Johnny League suggests 3D chess as
and welcome, Johnny.
Something that's
hey Johnny.
Hello, Johnny. And Elaine Sweatman says the book Kingdom of Elysian.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. Both of those are great suggestions.
Good one.
Right. Yeah, and we know that there's still people still write books, people still write stories, because that's what Jake Sisko is doing.
Jake Sisko,
right. And we know that his, at least in the Visitor version of the future, he had books and stories that were very popular, and people would come to see him, and that sort of thing. So there's still, we still got composers, you still have an art scene, you still have popular writers going on in the 24th century.
Right. Well, speaking of people who write, who write novels or holo novels, you have the EMH from Voyager.
That's right. Photons be free.
There you go.
And it seems like that's the biggest popular entertainment that we've seen in the 24th century is holodecks,
Absolutely.
suites, holo novels. I mean, they reference those all the time. I mean, whether the ones that Quark's peddling or the classier ones, and things like Photon Be Free that have a big cultural impact. That I mean the Doctor essentially started an uprising or revolution amongst the other EMHs, the ones that for whatever reason they were sent to work in the mines, and that they were inspiring them. That just like today, some groundbreaking piece of work may come out that would inspire people to push for more rights and to speak up. That sort of thing's still going on in the future.
So what would you envision? Because one of the things is, of course, when you're looking at Star Trek by default, you're looking at the military, and I'm going to say the military. You're looking at the military, the diplomatic corps, and so forth. So you're looking at people who already have certain, maybe certain lifestyles. But if just the average Federation dude, do you think that they still have anything akin to television? I know twice they said they didn't. In the neutral zone, they said, I think Data said television didn't last past a certain time. And then, of course, there's Bread and Circuses, where the proconsul says to Kirk, when he was talking about the ratings of the show they were going to have when they were going to kill them, he looks at Kirk and goes, "Oh, yeah, your century is beyond anything as crude as television." So do you think that they would still have literally television, like seriously an NBC or all that kind of stuff, where people just go home and plop up on the couch?
Yeah, we saw that on Picard, and we've seen it on Lower Decks, that there is a Federation news service, and they have, their broadcasts look very similar to our current TV news broadcasts.
So you think they would still have shows like, somebody would just go home in 2375 and watch like Three's Company with aliens instead of humans, or their equivalent of Friends or something like that. I don't think that they would be beyond that kind of entertainment. Do you? Even though they kind of hint that they're beyond those simplistic entertainment like that.
And that's why I think that, and this kind of brings me to Andor, because Andor is very much it's a Star Trek show, but it's not the big ships and the pew pew and all that kind of stuff. It's the everyday people living in the Empire. Right. And I think we need an everyday run of the mill guy and girl in the Federation. What's life on Earth? Let's just have a show that's set in the 24th century, but not set in space.
Yeah,
even if it's just a one-time off, a one series of 10 episodes, just do something different.
Yeah, because I think they would still have sitcoms and they would still have drama shows. And of course, they would be three-dimensional holograms that you could probably literally step into. But I don't think I'm going to cross streams here, kind of do like what you did, Alan, talking about Andor. Babylon 5 has an episode where there's this comedy duo that comes, and I forget their name. It was something like Lenny and Zoot or something like that, and they have this really stupid catchphrase that they go Zoot Zoot Zoot, and it's really silly. And even people like Captain Sheridan, the commander of B5, is a fan. And some of the people like Lando is like, "What are you talking about?" And it's literally one of those, you got people who are almost snobbish, and then everybody is, "Oh, they're great, they're great." And they're just really some stupid comedy duo. And I tend to think that would still exist in the 24th century in the track world. We just don't see it.
Well, we did see on Lower Decks, we saw references to the Choo Choo Dance. The Zebulon Sisters were a popular act.
Point.
And, you got your Choo Choo shirt. Veronica has a Choo Choo shirt.
Yeah.
So there's still at least dance fads and things like that.
Yeah. Matt brings up a good point that I was thinking of earlier, but I couldn't think of a way to phrase it. And Matt's got it. There's also pop culture, not contemporary with the show, but that is specific to Trek. Captain Proton or Dixon Hill. Those are definitely retro things that aren't pre-existing things.
Right. But I think they're definitely supposed to be things that are from the 20th century and the Trek universe, though.
Exactly. Right. But they're things that Trek came up with, basically.
Right. So you don't have to pay Dashiell Hammett.
Exactly. Right.
Also, I want to call out Matt. Matt a minute ago said that Way to Eden was guilty pleasure for us all. And then was it Tony Bowers who said space hippies?
Yep.
And welcome, Tony.
Yep.
Hippies in space. There you go.
Yep.
There you go. So I think what we're saying is, and I think it's always been very interesting. To me, Roddenberry is somewhat like George Lucas and some other creators, which is when you take over their property, you sometimes take it in ways where they probably didn't want it to go after a while.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
sure.
do know, and I do know things like this. Some of this, what we would even call lowbrow humor. Like before the show started, we were all talking about some old comedy groups that we did or didn't like Abbott and Costello, and what were the other ones? Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy. And I think Roddenberry, as he got older, felt that literally humanity was going to be like almost too good for that kind of lowbrow humor. But at the same time, I think it goes back to the very thing they said about humans. You still need to do silly stuff to be human, kind of like on the Shore Leave planet. That advanced civilization, they said play. You got to play.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but not everybody that exists in the future is going to be highbrow. As long as you've got like a shipping line of, I don't care, you're going to have people who, I mean, it's just the nature of, everybody likes crass humor once in a while.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
Well, then there's also the phenomenon of, different cultures remaking one another's art. And I think Julian referenced that at one point in the show that about humans retelling alien stories in theater, but then also you have famous examples like Shakespeare and the original Klingon and things like that. Where as these cultures intermingle, it's only natural that you would translate stories or remake them and to suit different cultures. What I think is fascinating too. I mean, is there a Klingon version of Laurel and Hardy?
Wouldn't that be interesting to see? I think a Klingon stand-up comic.
Yeah,
like what humor would rattle the rib cage of a Klingon warrior? I think
would have Worf cracking up. It would be like Worf telling jokes, I think.
Right.
You've got me thinking now that you said that, because then you have cultures that constrain what you can do, such as in Cardassia. All the murder mysteries and stuff, right? You always know who did it, because there was some conversations between. There was some great literature that Garrick had Julian reading, and it was like super dry, but because the whole point was to teach that lesson, kind of like their courts, where you're guilty and there's no doubt you're going to be guilty.
Right. That was the Never-Ending Sacrifice, was that story that it's the same story generation after generation, and it just goes on forever. But I was thinking, just last night I was watching that episode where Worf was on trial for blowing up the freighter, and you have that Klingon lawyer, and he approaches the law the same way Klingons approach everything. So would a Klingon stand-up comic be ready to slay the audience?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's such a good point, Charles.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That they would bring that, different cultures would bring their ethos into all these different professions,
Exactly.
But here's the thing, given what you're saying, I'm being very serious here, following what you guys are saying, could you be on the stage and start poking fun at Martok or Kang? I mean, could you do that?
How often do the stand-up comics get stabbed?
Yeah.
That joke was without honor.
Because again, what's so funny in our world right now, and matter of fact, if you look at the 4 or 5 most powerful countries on the planet after us, you couldn't do that. Now here, you can have a White House roast, and I remember when Seth Meyers did the Correspondents' Dinner. It was Barack Obama's last year, and he was just riffing on how Barack Obama came in as super young and handsome, and he looked like an old gray-haired man, and his wife. Can you imagine doing that to Putin or to Martok? Well, Martok might be cool. I like Martok.
I think Martok would be cool. Gowron, on the other hand, would not be cool.
Gowron would do the eyes at you first. He does not forgive or forget.
Right.
And I think there are some cultures that I love what you guys are saying. You got me thinking in a way I hadn't thought. There are some cultures where they would probably want to do it, but their government, their society wouldn't let them. Romulans. I can't see you having a stand-up comedian in Romulans. I just can't see that.
But I'm not sure that we've seen enough aspects of Romulan society to know that could be a possibility, though. Because again, it's just like with the Federation, we only see basically the military side of it. We don't see the average Romulan living in their home. There's got to be Romulans with a sense of humor somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a point.
Yeah.
So do you think in that time they still basically would have celebrities? Lily Travel, and I don't want to be flip, but would they still have Beyonce Knowles and Chris Rock types and people like that, Lily traveling around the Federation? In B5 they did. Do you think in a world of the
Yeah.
Federation they would have that? Comedy tours and music tours where people act just like
Yeah.
us nowadays?
Yeah, like a USO tour.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Well, I mean, just like you have the troupe on the Enterprise who was performing Shakespeare. I imagine there's a lot of troops that troops as in the performance sense, traveling around performing for different groups in distant colonies. Probably it's a big deal for a colony when sort of like the old vaudeville days when the acts come into town. It'd probably be a big deal for them, or like a traveling circus, things like that.
Exactly.
That'd be really fascinating. It'd be interesting too to see what different, like for instance, an alien race may have a very different view of what our classics are than what we have. They may look at it and say, Shakespeare was not very good, but this Three Stooges, this is genius. Where humans wouldn't have praised themselves that way.
That's a good point. Keith's Facebook friends. What's his name, Keith?
CW.
CW.
Wayne.
What? Okay. Says, makes me think that we're fortunate that Klingons lack a sense of humor. And Matt says he wants to see a Temerian stand-up comedian.
Oh my gosh.
That would be amazing.
That would be awesome. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, Veronica has joined the show. Welcome to the show, Veronica.
Hi.
Hi.
And I wanted to share, it's not troops, TROOPS, it's troops, TROUPS.
Yes. But I was saying it
OUPES.
Yes, correct.
I'm still stuck on naked, so I didn't know that. I'm gonna leave that alone.
It's like the difference between theater and theater.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, Veronica, we were saying we just have normal comedians and musicians and fans in the 24th century like we have now. No, everybody's not super sophisticated. All they do is read Shakespeare all day long.
No, they could not be.
This is sort of a side question, and I don't want to dwell too long on this one, but I'm just curious to know, since we've mentioned B5, what other shows do you think have done a pop culture in its world better than Trek?
Ooh.
Like, can you think of examples of something that has actually created an art form, a music form, or something in its world?
Star Wars is the first thing that springs to my mind, with like things like the Cantina Band and the Jabba's Palace. There's and that was right off the bat in the first Star Wars movie. You have the Cantina Band. You've got, it was basically a jazz band, but with alien instruments.
Right, exactly. CW says, I wish the show producers could see this episode. Romulans at home. I'd pay to see that.
I want to see the Three Stooges Klingon version where they're using batlets instead of pies and really poking each other's eyes out and things. It'd be a very bloody Three Stooges.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
The Jetsons.
Oh, yeah, the Jetsons. There was like 60s style futuristic bands and things like that.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Futurama has done a lot of good stuff with that too.
That's true. Yeah.
I hate to go here, but in the first season, there was that weird hologram thingy Riker had going on in his quarters where there was these two women and then he was kind of grinning at it, and then I don't know, was that like a romance novel he was gonna watch, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
I don't think it was a novel.
Well, I know, that's why I said I kind of hesitated to go there, but it was some kind of entertainment, and I'll just leave it there.
Oh, it was.
It wasn't literature. But they do also have video games, because we saw that in the game.
Yeah,
that's
where
right.
everyone's, that's pop culture as well. That there's maybe popular games that go around, ones that don't take over your brain.
So a question I had jotted down was, I would assume that in the 24th century, at least on Earth and the Federation, everybody has access to holographic technology, and you really wouldn't need a holo deck and a holo suite to at least have like 3D sound and pictures even in your home. So I wonder, would sometimes things like television, sitting down watching somebody else's scripted programming, would that fade because you could just step into something you want? Like you could live any adventure you want. And you know those books, like those old choose your adventure books and shows? And, every now and then some streaming service does something. I wonder would it be like that a lot? Like instead of sitting down watching Friends, you just want to you do your own adventure at home.
Oh, and if there's people who think like, go ahead.
No.
If there's people who think like, oh, I can't change the ending, this is lame. You know, I have to read Macbeth and the ending's gonna be the same every time. I'm
that's a good point.
I want to be Macbeth.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Like the characters are programmed based on whatever the thing is, and they react based on what you do.
Exactly. Just like
simple AI.
Just like Data's recreations of the Sherlock Holmes, where you step into the character role yourself.
Right.
Elaine says, apparently they still watch sports in the future. That is true. Archer is always watching water polo on the Enterprise.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're always hearing about Parisi. Is it Parisi Squares? Is
Parisi
that the one?
Squares, yeah.
We're always hearing about those tournaments. I don't think we ever saw it. And then I guess on Earth, there's people cheering that crazy ambo jutsu. I mean, it's got to be a sport. So
but also there's still places out there where people are playing baseball because Cestus 3, they have the Pike City Pioneers.
That's right.
Good point. Forgot about that one.
See, I expect that if you're just like an average Joe in the Federation, that you can watch sports from across the galaxy and you can watch plays. And with that, you would think that the holodecks, that our characters would have the top of the line holodecks, and they still almost get murdered by them a lot. So I imagine how sketchy the holodecks are like on colonies.
Right.
I think it's I think what you were saying, Alan, makes so much sense, and that is that there's two things. One, there's in real life there's paying for like current music, and then as we were also saying, there's if you write say music for Star Trek, it dates it. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to know. Of course, in our case, it'd be a couple centuries before they get around going, man, war were they off? You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I tend to think that they would do a lot more of the stuff like the novels. And again, I cite B5. They had a traveling comedy group going around. So I think that must be going on in the Federation. We just don't, know about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. So hopefully the new shows will continue. I mean, continue showing us them watching the classics and listening to the classics, but also keep expanding the Federation and the civilian life, because I think that's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Wow. So that means there's a TMZ in the future.
That's a show idea.
Reporting on Kirk's love life.
Oh boy.
Holy, that's a great. Oh my God. Because,
awesome.
I talked about doing a medical drama in Trek and doing a police procedural drama in Trek. Why not have a TMZ style Trek too? Ooh, that's so cool.
That'd be awesome.
Right.
That would pull in a whole different audience.
Right, maybe.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
All right.
Well,
let's transition over to talking about Star Trek Prodigy, because I think we're gonna have a lot to say about Star Trek Prodigy this week. Veronica, did you want to give out a spoiler warning?
Yes. Spoilers.
Okay, great job.
Wow.
And that's spoilers for Star Trek Prodigy Preludes, which aired today, which was fascinating. I thought it was a really interesting episode.
I did too.
Boy, it was backstory overload.
It was.
Oh my God.
It was. It kind of caught me off guard because I didn't expect that, but we talked about this before. It looks like they're not stretching these mysteries and stuff out too long. We're not going to go 2 or 3 years still saying, boy, I wonder if Janeway's going to figure out that such and such. I like the pacing. And so, I agree with you. I like the backstory. The Ruktuk one, I did not expect at all. I did not expect that.
Yeah. So we got backstories on how some of these characters came to Tars Lamor, and then we got backstory on Jamila Jamil's character, Essentia. I couldn't remember the name. And then we get a little bit of backstory on the diviner himself.
Right.
And then Janeway starts to launch into a little backstory about Molly. So it was just like, let's pause and learn everything we can about all these characters.
Yeah,
it was interesting.
It's kind of cool though. I mean, it's like let's get all this out of the way and have an episode where they're just they're stopped and everyone is just sort of chilling for an episode, and we'll just find out what happened.
But
And
okay, here's the thing though, Rock. We found out the situation that she was in when she got captured and delivered to Tars Lamora. How did she get in the situation that we saw her in?
That's the thing I wonder too.
Right, like
because she's a child, right? She was a child, basically. Yes, I don't know. Where are her people? What happened? You're right. Yeah, that's the thing I didn't get.
So I still got questions.
And I expected the guy that she was sort of fake dueling may not even know that she was an 8-year-old girl.
Yeah,
that's true.
He just knows this is a creature.
That's very true. Because
so what do we think about her, that backstory?
That was pretty interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
I wish the guy hadn't been a douchebag.
It wasn't him. He was fine.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of sort of reminded me of Dr. Mora, the guy who helped raise Odo, because remember Odo resented him because he didn't some ways know how to raise Odo, and there was the whole thing, Odo's name, and how people made fun of Odo, and like sometimes people who are picked on who resort to humor. Remember, Odo used to do faces for the pleasure of the Cardassians, and so her background kind of sort of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I liked that backstory. I liked it. Makes a lot of sense of why they sort of wanted her in the security role, and she doesn't want to do the security role.
Yes,
like she's very turned off by all that. But I gotta say though, I don't care for laser swords in Star Trek. I'm happy to leave the laser swords over in Star Wars and Star Trek do something different, you know?
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. One comment I had to make on this show is I never thought I'd see the Kazon again.
A lot of Kazon.
Yeah, they were in like every backstory because it was them that was capturing people and delivering them.
Slaving around the galaxy, yeah.
Right. Useless.
You're telling me the Kazon who couldn't find a way to produce water in the Voyager pilot can capture a Medusan?
Well, I would expect that this is a different Kazon sect or order or whatever they call it.
Whatever they were called, You
mean competent ones?
Right, yeah. It's not Kazon Nistra or whomever. So these are the good Kazon on the other side of the quadrant. I thought about that one in Zero's backstory though. That like, oh, he's getting captured by the Kazon. How embarrassing!
Right. Oh, okay. And what was up? This is like an ET thing. What was up the rest of Zero's not a he? What was up with the rest of Zero's people when they were being chased? And Zero's trying to get to the ship, and the ship's like, "We're out." So
yeah, I know, right? I know. Maybe they just didn't do a head count. Maybe Zero's like buddy,
they're
like hold your hand, buddy.
But they can't hear the little kid that's out of the side of the ship running for their life.
Yeah.
Or maybe Medusans just are different from humans. Maybe they don't. They're like, well, everybody who can make it. It's the best for the all.
That's true.
Yeah. Maybe maybe one is an acceptable loss.
I'm going to seriously cross the stream, Sir Charles, and say like the Harfoots in the Lord of the Rings of Power. And if anybody who's seen that, there's a whole thing about leaving people behind. Because I was like, I was watching. Well, let's see. Yeah, he won't be listening. I was watching this at work, and I was sitting there going, "Wait a minute! You just left them behind." I also thought, aside, the Medusan ship was cool.
The Medusan ship. It looked like the Medusan ship from the remastered version with the new special effects of the original series.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, they recreated that ship in a lot of respects.
And I thought that was a super cool touch. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sounded like a dinosaur. Again, I never watched the remasters, so I didn't know that.
Well, next time you do, the Medusan ship's in there, and it looks like this ship.
Kind of cool. Yeah. One thing I thought was actually kind of interesting too, because I always say this is a kid's show, but it has some good emotional beats. It's wild when some of these people would tell their story, and it would intersect with when again, because she was there at some of this, and she was, and so that kind of guilt that she would have to deal with. I thought that was very interesting.
Right? Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And then we have Jenkin Pog.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I thought that previously he said he was on a generational ship, but are they just conflating generational ships with cryo ships?
I think so.
Yeah.
I was
Lower Decks has done that too.
I was wondering about that myself. Like generation ship in the sense that it takes generations to get where you're going, not that generations have lived, Yeah, I thought that was kind of a confusing point as well.
Right.
I thought that was a strange one because I still can't understand what was going on. Was that robot just completely glitched and making him do that? And I also
You're analyzing it too much, buddy.
But why?
Because it has to explain why he refers to himself as Jankum Pog. Jankum Pog will go and do it. Now you know why he says that.
Okay, but what I'm missing is, was he literally the only person who could repair the ship? Why did it go to him?
It didn't go to him. His thing was triggered by the rock that hit the hull, and then the hull did the thing, and then the piece fell on the thing.
Right.
And then a robot malfunctioned. Okay. Yeah. And so there was a malfunction. It literally was like, okay, your weight, go fix everything. And luckily he could.
Basically,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think the resolution made sense where he basically said something to the effect of there wasn't enough oxygen, so he's going to leave the ship. But I'm like, but you've been fixing everything, so they could die after you leave.
Right.
Well,
and they're in cryo sleep. How much air do they need?
Right. That's I didn't get that either. That's what makes sense, because literally the robot was saying something to the effect of, because he was freaking out, he was hyperventilating, he was basically going to kill everybody. Like, we can't take that much oxygen.
Well, and here's the other thing: doesn't this ship have the ability to like recycle air?
Right.
Absolutely.
And also, what if the little robot had said there's not enough air for the 29 people on the ship? And what if he said, well, what if for the 30 people on the ship? And he said, well, what if there's 29? And she goes, well, sorry, there's not enough air for only 15 of them. Then what do you do?
Just chuck half of them out.
Right. Yeah, you can get really morbid after that. You can go back and like the robot. You keep saying like a little cryo chamber getting ejected from the ship.
Yeah,
I love the little robot though. I thought it was adorable.
Yeah,
I thought it was cute.
Was cool.
Yeah, I'm also not fond of cute robots in Star Trek.
I know that.
Cute robots and laser swords. I feel like those have been done. You know what I mean?
That was probably my least favorite of them, even though I liked it because I was getting stuck on some stuff.
Matt corrects you. They're phaser swords, Charles.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, only after the first pilot.
CW says, you guys are totally destroying these writers' plot devices.
Yes.
I think they'll be okay.
and that's the thing, when you're doing a backstory on a series of characters and you've got like 3 minutes per character, you can't get too involved in what's going on with like, having there be a super deep reason and rationalizing why he just walks out of the ship in order for 29 people who are in cryo to have air to breathe. Right. You just got to let it go.
But they covered a lot of ground in this episode.
Yeah, they did.
They really did.
And really the big one, story-wise, is the Diviner's backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which is super complex.
Right. Yeah. And
needs more than the 3 minutes it got.
Right.
I got to tell you, watching that, I'm thinking I wouldn't want you guys in the Federation.
Right.
Those people got issues. I mean, because think about this. Literally, an interstellar organization comes to you and says, hey, we'd like you to join us. And they get so pissy within their own civilization that they destroy their own civilization because they argued over it. And now they want to come back and destroy everybody else's civilization. Like, what? Seriously?
That doesn't make any sense. Like, Federation didn't cause this discourse. You guys killed yourselves because you're nuts.
Because you're dum-dums.
Well, and then it sounded like Chakotay, the protostar, went through a temporal vortex into the Delta Quadrant. So he was lost in the... That's bad luck, man. Getting lost in the Delta Quadrant twice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
If he wasn't even aiming for that, and then he just ends up...
Right. Ah, nuts. Not again.
But also, it was a temporal thing.
Yeah, it was. He was so.
He's not in the current timeline for Janeway to find.
Is he?
He's in the future.
Yeah, he's in the future because they sent the ship back, without crew on it. So he's still like 30 years or whatever it is in the future.
Yeah, on not on Tars Lamora, but on Solum, the planet Solum.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So Janeway's been looking for this guy, and he's not even around.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I know. So are we going to find Chakotay or at some point in the future?
Right. I don't know, man, but
I want to know what they're going to do with Janeway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also want to know how she learned that they were kidnapped. Like, where was that information found? Like,
The who was kidnapped?
The kids were kidnapped. Like,
Well,
finding out they were kids, obviously.
Yeah.
But if there's information out there that these kids had been kidnapped,
right?
Why was it not a thing that was easily found previously?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much information was on that warrant or how much they know about Tars Lamora. They may know that Tars Lamora was like a slave place. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I wondered a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. There's
In which
definitely
case, why didn't you know that the diviner was the slave person?
Oh, I don't know.
there?
I don't know.
Well, they don't know that the guy that they have in custody is the diviner.
Right? That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn it, I just had a thing. It's gone.
Okay.
Gone.
I hate that.
Dang it.
Yeah. So yeah, I still like some more explanation on this backstory.
Yeah.
Or it might be better if they just stop explaining it and just continue on with the story.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm thinking this race went through a super elaborate plan to get back at the Federation. When
I mean, how do they have time travel?
Well, they went
it's an
through the same
anomaly. Never
vortex.
mind.
with
Never
the
mind.
anomaly.
I know. I'm dumb. I'm with it now. I just had the thing in my head again, and now it's gone again. I can't. It's like slippery, like an eel.
Right.
I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that race, and I just dropped the episode where he said it. But I remember one episode of the original series, Kirk was talking to someone, and he says, "Your problem is within yourselves." And basically, he was telling them not trying to blame everybody else to solve their own problems. And I'm looking at this race, and they're almost like mustache twirling bad villains, because like, yeah, we're gonna do all these ships, and every ship has a dreadnought on it, and we're gonna do the construct. And the whole time I'm thinking, if you took all that energy and hatred and funneled it internally, just rebuild your society.
Yeah.
Or even just go old school and build an old school invasion fleet. But man, they got some elaborate plans, and I'm thinking,
Well,
you guys are jacked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm interested to see where they go with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, are they going to find Chakotay? I hope this is not all Chakotay gets.
I think there's more.
No, there's got to be more. They could not have lured him back just to do that little bit.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
That could be. I mean, at some point, the story's got to take another turn. It could be that the Prodigy goes to Solom in the future and to find Chakotay.
Very possible.
Like that, they could do whatever they want with the show. So it's
yeah.
I was a little surprised that Janeway just barged into Cynthia's cabin without knocking. But I'm glad she didn't, because there was a killer robot there.
Right.
Right.
So every one of their ships has one of those robots then, right? That's what
there could be more of them out there.
Yeah.
CW says, like I said, I wish the producers could see this show. A lot of good ideas flying around.
Hey,
well,
thank you. I appreciate that.
I think
if anyone has connections, send podcast information to the official Star Trek
Paramount.
I'm sure they're watching.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, we're talking about Chakotay. I agree with you. There's got to be more for Chakotay, because everybody knows Robert Beltran wouldn't have come back for just like a quick thing. And also, this being Trek, at some point in time, they're going to have to somehow contrive to have Janeway go to the future and do what Star Trek does, which is talk a race down. She's going to have to. She's going to have to somehow go into the future and negotiate with those people and get everybody on the same page. So I think she will end up in the future with Chakotay.
Or with Janeway being Janeway, she may undo Solon's history and fix it. Janeway is not beyond changing the past. If it comes down to Janeway, makes the hard calls, man.
But it's not. But Janeway wouldn't, from her perspective, be changing the past, because for her it has not happened yet.
Yeah,
she might lay groundwork for what happens. So it's timey-wimey.
Right.
But I've been expecting at some point, not anytime soon, but at some point, that there would be that moment where Janeway finally confronts the kids, and that's when she finds out that they aren't criminals, they're not thieves, they didn't steal the ship, they're just kids, and she's now already found that out. I think that's really, I just didn't expect that information to come to her the way that it did, and it to be sort of a downplayed moment where she's
Right.
like, oh, hey, they're just kids. They're just in a situation that's, over their head. They're not
Right.
bad. And I didn't expect that revelation to come to her in the way that it did.
Right. Yeah. Me
I
either.
feel robbed.
I'm glad though that they're figuring things out.
Yeah.
I agreed.
You know?
Totally
Like,
agreed.
You don't want to see the Starfleet crew fly around clueless for half the season.
Right.
When we the audience already have those answers. That I like that they're smart and they're working things out, and
sure,
that killer robot didn't make it too long on the ship without being found.
Right.
I thought it was something interesting. The other lady from his people, she said somewhat contemptuously of the diviner that he seemed excited when he saw the first ship approach. So I thought that was a very interesting little point. Her mindset seems to have been she never ever thought it was a good idea, but she mentioned that he looked with some excitement when the ship came. So maybe at one point in time he was open to it.
Right.
But then he saw the results. So maybe he will actually be flipped. Maybe he'll be the key to negotiations at some point.
That's
interesting.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of interesting ways that they could go with it.
I do think that's a possibility, because he basically has Gwen, who is on the Federation side of things now, who would be that extra influence on him. So it's going to be sort of like a battle of wills between Essentia and Gwen for the diviner's allegiance.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh, that's going to be interesting. Well, gonna be like, that's definitely what's going to happen. That could be interesting.
Their people must be one of those kind of psycho xenophobe races, because even if they could go back to the anomaly, they literally could have sent one ship and gone to the Federation and say, "Hey, can you stay away?" Literally just say, "Stay away." They're like, "Nah, we're going back to destroy the entire Federation." So they must be one of those crazy races that just they just want to take you out. And we've had some of those in Star Trek before, where they're truly alien in a strange way.
Right. Yeah. Well, they wanted to undo the Federation entirely, which it does seem extreme.
Well,
it's kind of like Nero.
What's that?
Kind of like Nero from Star Trek 2009.
Oh yeah.
It's very Nero-ish.
You know what I always think about when people do stuff like that, when they want to take out the Federation or something like that, I always think, okay, you take out the Federation and let's say you bring the Federation to its knees. Don't you know the Klingons and the Romulans and the Cardassians are going to drift over there? Yeah. You just brought more trouble on yourself.
I don't know that they know all of that, though.
Right.
Yeah, they wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one day they look up and the skies would be filled with a whole different set of ships. No negotiation.
Because here's the thing. They're in the Delta Quadrant. The best they know is the stupid Kazon. So,
Yeah. Because and 8472 is cool, right? They went back to their space and they're not coming back, right?
Exactly.
We'll see.
The Herosian, what if they showed up? They're always looking for somebody to hunt.
Right.
God, I love the Herosian.
I would love the Herosian to show up.
Me too.
Heck yes.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're all still pretty positive about it, with some reservations. But
this is past the drop-off point that we had in some of the Discovery seasons and in Picard season 2. So it's doing pretty well.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think it was a good episode. My little nitpicks about some of the plot stuff. This episode did one of those good things where they blended kind of what is a kid's show with this kind of a Star Trek show for us adults who like it.
Oh yeah.
And it was a good, fast-paced show. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. They blended it just enough. I was pleased with everything that I got, and I love that the plot keeps moving on. As you said, we don't want 2 or 3 seasons where they're still bumbling around trying to figure it out. So I like that.
Yep.
All right. Well, a couple of announcements. One, this past year we took part in the Captain Picard Week Podcast Festival, which a bunch of podcasts came together and did a Captain Picard Week, and you can go back and rewatch our episode or listen to it on our podcast. That's still out there. But we've been invited back to participate in the Captain Picard Week Podcast Festival again.
Yeah,
so that'll be taking place. It'll be, I'm not sure that the festival goes from February 9th to 15th. It's sort of the week leading up to the premiere of Picard season 3 on the 16th of February.
Okay.
But I don't have our date just yet. The scheduling is still up in the air. So we'll keep everybody appraised, but we'll also be promoting the other podcasts. That's kind of the point of it, is all these podcasts coming together, promoting one another, supporting one another. And maybe you'll find a show that you like, your new second favorite Star Trek podcast. And we'll keep posting about it and as more information comes out. But also, we mentioned last week, and I mentioned on the Facebook page now, our Facebook group, that we have the Earth Station Trek hotline.
Yes.
If you dial on your phone 307-387-1701, that'll connect you to a voicemail message with a cute little message from Veronica.
Hi.
And you can leave a comment, a question of the week. You can an opinion about Star Trek that you have, just something that you want to get out there, that we'd love to play your message on the show and respond to it, or just play it and let everyone else hear what you had to say. I think it's fun. I mean, you can always you can just record yourself on your phone as MP3 and email it to us, earthstationtrek@gmail.com. Sure. I think a hotline's fun, though. I think it's fun to call into a hotline and hear a message and like the old days. Yeah.
And you will not have to talk to a human being. You just have to hear my voice and then not talk to a human being.
I made sure it was not going to call my phone every time someone called in. So no one's going to answer if you're nervous about that. It's just a voicemail that picks up, and feel free to call and leave a message, and we'd love to hear it.
That's right. And once again, that number is 307-387-1701.
That's right.
There you go.
All right. So, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Go to cosmicpress.com, KOZMIC press.com. And there you can see the books that I have written and the books by other authors that I have published. And you will see a list of the podcasts that I am involved in.
Wow.
Like the very diviner.
Thank you.
All right, Keith, you're up.
Follow that.
Well, you can find me on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I won't fight you.
Oh my God.
That's a perfect choice. Go the opposite way. And how about us, Veronica?
FeltNerdy.com.
And
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
Yes. Jenkin Pog can fix it.
Hey, perfect.
Awesome.
He said it enough.
Yeah. And it's not Veronica Bramlett can fix it, because I cannot.
No.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. See you next week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.